right, for this exercise today, I'm going to show you how I morph my sketches. I'm going to be making two different types of quick, intuitive, expressive, simple sketches. So I really like folk art, raw art, the look of just very like childlike drawing. So I've done these quick sketches to kind of loosen up, and then I want to morph them into like one piece. So what we'll be doing is some quick face sketches, and then also these little magpie sketches. So I'm going to show you how I do that. The materials that we're going to use today will be your gessoed pieces of paper. So you can use vintage book pages. These were photocopies that I clear gessoed and added some coffee to. These were also some vintage pieces of paper that I had that I clear gessoed over. Also, you can just use plain newsprint, anything that you have, really, just copy paper, anything. We're gonna do lots of layers on these, so you know, when I like to start with something on the page, it kind of helps me relax and not have that like fear of blankness. So you want your pieces of paper. These were some other ones that I had pulled out that I didn't necessarily want to use, so I did photocopies of these, and then I will age these. Clear gesso. Clear gesso is important for this because we're going to be using a lot of water on top of it, so you want to be mindful of having some extra, like the gesso really helps for the papers not to like deteriorate quickly. So the other things that we're going to be using to do is I have a little squirt bottle of water, some coffee or tea, and a little paintbrush. And I'm going to be using the matte gel to adhere this. So this technique is important to use the matte gel because it's not as liquid. It doesn't have as much water in it. And so it won't smear the pieces as much because we are going to be using a charcoal pencil. This is really important. If you don't have that and you want to use the Stabilo, that works too. It's just a little bit of a darker line. I grabbed out a pencil just from some extra marks, pins too to add extra marks, and then I also like my little scraper to when I glue things on. I use this. So real basic, simple things today that we're going to be using. And I also grabbed out some of the altered papers that we did, the tissues with the marks on them, and some black tissue. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how I do these really quick expressive portrait drawings. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll just put those there so you can see them. And I'm going to work on this today, and then maybe this. I'm going to tear them in half. So I didn't gesso the backs of these yet, but I think it's really important as we go through this book that we do want to think about both sides of our pages. So if you are gessoing and you have, you know, front and back complete, that's great. Because all of this is going to be torn up again and reused and recycled. So I'm going to just go ahead and make these a little smaller. So I like to work small, and depending on the size of your workspace, That's going to kind of like make how big your book's going to be. And I talked about that before. You know, if you have a really tiny workspace, like work smaller, it's less daunting and it's just more fun. And your book's still going to be really amazing and fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to work this way because I want to do 2 on this. And I'm just going to use a black charcoal pencil. These are very inexpensive and really fun and very readily available. And this was one of my favorites. So I'm going to just quickly sketch a face. So the eyes, the nose, and just be really loose about this. The more you move your pencil around and just kind of hold, you know, maybe hold your pencil back more. I mean, we're really not like drawing. We're not trying to get a bunch of detail. This is fun, and you want to let your intuition take over here a little bit. So, and then again, just, you know, really loose, very light in areas. I like the little scribbles, so I like to add that too. And I'm going to give her some interesting, I guess wing-like scribbles is what I'm kind of doing. Because as we morph these 2 sketches together, your bird sketch and your face sketch, you're going to want to kind of have both of those elements. So, you know, think feathers. This is a bird girl, so we want to catch that element, you know. So I'm going to do 2. I'm going to do another one. I like to start a little bit higher up, you know, that's so you can use the whole page and kind of get some of this. And make them, you know, play around, make them look different, each one. Smaller features and larger features. And you can see I'm just holding my pencil really far back, so I don't have a lot of control, and things are happening that I am not in total control of. So I like that, and that's part of the interest that you're building in these. You know, just let your child like wonder and experimentation come out in this process. Okay, so I have these 2 done. The next thing I like to do is there's a couple different things you can do. You can just spritz the whole thing with some water lightly, and that's going to start moving some of that around a little. And then I like to come back in with my coffee. So, and I will move this more and, you know, darken up these spots that I created with my charcoal pencil. And just really, again, hold your brush really far back and just intuitively move this charcoal pencil around. You already see you just start getting a really neat like unpredictable. So another thing I like to do is then maybe just add some marks making, and you can always go back. Okay, so quickly again, we're just adding water and coffee now to our sketches to kind of meld in some of that charcoal and just really intuitively do this. You can do this with plain water too. You don't have to use coffee. Tea works. I like building layers. And I think it's so fun to just see what happens when you put different things together. So I'm always experimenting with different ways to use simple materials to get different looks. So that's a good start. You can always go back in with your charcoal pencil and darken things again, especially when it's wet. It's kind of fun to go in and just add a few more little interesting marks if you've kind of lost some areas that you want to show. But it's going to dry lighter, and always you can go back in. But I just really love that you cannot predict how this turns out, and when you're morphing like pieces together, it's really cool how it all just comes together. So I'm going to set this one aside. And then we're going to do a magpie sketch. So if you picked a different bird, let me see if I can find her. That's fine. So we're going to just go with that. So we're going to try and keep the scale a little bit the same. This was my little sketch that I am starting with, that I'm going to use for reference. You can find something online, or let's see if I can find my other little piece. So I start ripping things up and then they kind of disappear, but that's okay. We will make this work. So again, I'm just going to take my charcoal pencil. Here it is. So I don't know what happened to the whole thing here, but okay, here it is. So this is kind of what we're looking for, and you can see the scale is similar to our face sketches. So you want to keep that in mind. You kind of want to do a little bit of the same scale. And this was my reference. So this was an image that I found online that I loved, and then I traced it and photocopied it, and I did it my own way so that it wasn't like, if you're copying something, just be really careful about that and make it your own. So you can start with an image, but then you want to keep rotating it into different things. So I would use this in a journal for my own personal use, but it's close enough to the original that I wouldn't ever feel comfortable using it in a piece of art that I was selling. So so by doing this again, so taking this image and charcoal, you're going to keep getting your own art. So that's a really good way if you're just learning to do it. And so I'm going to just start, and I'm just going to use a really light touch. I'm going to start with the beak, and I'm just following those lines. And just don't get stuck on what your pencil's doing. Just let it kind of have a mind of its own. Put the little eye there. Okay, so that was a good first one. And so maybe when I look at this together, I'm like, oh, well, the beak is farther out, but that's okay because we're going to keep adding to it. So you want that interest built, and either look at this one or look again at your reference photo. And then when you have so much else stuff going on too, it's really cool how these turn out. So quickly just do the all right, and then again, I'm going to take the either your spray bottle, give it a little spritz, and then come back in with your coffee or tea or water and your paintbrush and just kind of get that all scritched. So doing this and then letting it dry also helps preserve some of these marks so that when you add other material on top, it's not going to completely just wash away. So I'm going to go back in and just add a few more little lines. And so my reference photo, again, this was the original that I printed off. So a lot of the dark is in the wings and in the head. So I'll maybe follow that a little bit by adding some more of the charcoal in there. So then you're going to want to let these dry, and you can speed up the process with like a hair dryer or if you have a heat gun. All right, so there's our two sketches, our quick, intuitive sketches. And I'm going to let these dry, and then I'm going to show you how I put them together to make the little morphed bird girl. So I went ahead and dried these very quickly, and now I'm going to just rip them in half so that I have my 4 pieces. And then I had some others. Now when you're doing this, I think it's a really good idea to do like 2 or 3. So you would have like 4 or 6. So you have a lot of different things to work with as you try and meld everything together. So I have all my sketches, and I'm gonna start like tearing them apart. I also have some of the tissue papers that we made marks on. The tissue paper that we made marks on. So that kind of comes into play too if you want to add darks and lights. So I have that and I'm really just going to start playing with, what works together. So when you have, 5 or 6 different faces, everything's going to kind of meld together, and really just start playing. What looks good, and don't worry about things hanging off the side or draping over. So I wanted the eye of the bird to be one of the eyes of the girl. So that was what I was going for. So I'm kind of looking for lines that will connect that together. So I kind of like that. And then I would find her hairline or maybe her eyebrow and add in the other half of the bird. So I like that. I think that's really cool, and I'm seeing, the bird and the girl melding together. So what I'm going to do for this then is I'm going to use some matte medium, and because we used charcoal and coffee, it will still move around a little bit. So I'm kind of careful when I go in and I add these to just be really mindful of not using a whole bunch of material or the matte medium, because you'll just get a little bit of smearing. And the smearing is cool too, like it's not a big deal if that happens. But I'm gonna just kind of start putting these together. And do, you know, do all of them because they're all going to turn out different, and then you can pick which ones you love the most that you'll want to add to your journal or your art book. So I really loved that. Just want to make sure that that's really cool. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to use the matte medium, a thin coat. We're going to add stitches to this too, so we don't need to glue it down perfectly. If there's some edges that are like kind of sticking up or not adhering, that's okay too, because we're gonna do some more stitching and glue. And then if, you know, when you have loose pieces, things are gonna rip and tear and maybe like reveal some other interesting stuff. So don't be worried about that either. I love all that organic pieces. So if you have a brayer too nearby, that helps a lot with getting these stuck down for the first layer. So she's really cool. I'm gonna just grab another piece. These birds had a little less of the solid black line, so I'm going to go back in and just add that, and you can add that at any time. Just want a little bit more definition so I can find those lines to connect to. So again, I'm just going to keep the eye. I don't want to tear the eye in half. I want to keep the eye, and I'm going to tear this bird in half. So I love that there's two different types of vintage paper. This has handwriting, and this is a book page. So that's pretty cool. And then just play around with the different faces that you have. So we're replacing the eye of the bird. Onto the girl. See how many girls I have here. So. Like that, and then maybe come in I'm going to tear this section off. So I'm going to add that. Just go ahead and do it. If it feels right, just get it done. So then I have this little piece again of the bird, which is cool. You know, if I want to add it down here as one of the wings. You know, and maybe I need to get rid of some of this here. I'm gonna go with that. And don't be afraid to just make the decision, because again, like we're gonna just layer and we're gonna keep playing with these pieces until we're satisfied with them, until they feel good to us. And that's the thing I love about this process, is it's just very very freeing and a really cool way to work through your fears of creativity and get a lot of things like made. I mean, we made all of these things within, you know, 15 minutes, and you have, you know, a base for a lot of really interesting pieces for your journals. So I still have a little piece left, And I really like that. I think that's really cool. And she's just looking more and more like a bird girl. So I'm going to put that there. I really like how the two different vintage papers are playing off of each other. It's really neat. So that slid down a little. So you see I have a few little edges that maybe are lifting right here. I think I'm just going to come in and just add a little bit more of the matte medium. See how that, it kind of, I don't know if you can see, but when you do that it smears a little bit. That's okay. So she's really cool. So next thing I would do then after we got these two bird girls is I'm going to keep layering. So in this video, I'm just going to show you real quickly how to use some of the tissue papers that we made and just add again another layer on top of her. So the just want to add in those extra marks, and by you looking at the reference photo I can kind of see where like I'm missing some of the dark pieces, and we want to tear these like very organically and just add in a little more interest. And it's okay if they fold or they're just not perfect. Maybe that piece needs to be folded down a little. And you can see again, like where I'm touching some of this charcoal pencil, it's smearing it a little bit. So just be mindful of that. You don't want to like completely lose all of your marks. But I do just love to add in these little extra touches of interest. And tissue paper is so fun to work with. You just really, you'll still see through the other pieces, and I just love it. Add that piece there. I'm just gonna add one or two little pieces as I'm going through and just kind of looking at maybe where it needs a little bit of darkness. Again, everything that I'm showing you within this book is just very intuitive. It's not anything, it's a feeling of like, oh, I want that to be a little darker over there, or this is, maybe that's too abrupt of a line there. But I still love it, and I still am gonna just keep adding little touches. All right, so the other thing that I also want to mention too is if you have lost some of your lines as you're adding your glues, you can always come back in on top of this and work with your charcoal pencil. Or if you want to add some different marks, you can use a regular pencil or a pen. Let's see. So these are my 4 bird girls. Really turned out. So that's how I do my vintage bird girl portraits, and I just wanted to show real quickly how they turned out. I think they'll be really amazing. I will go back and add more layers, and maybe just like stick one of these down in my book to start. Some stitching would be really amazing. I could go back in with paint, but that's how they turn out. They're really fun, and it's easy to get a whole bunch of these made and started, and you could use any animal that you wanted. But I hope you had fun with this idea and this technique and make it your own. And these are great little pieces to jumpstart your art journaling practice, and I love having these on hand for that. So thanks for joining me and watching me work.